Hiya, how you doing? I'm Chris Driver, and with me is the indefatigable academic Jordan Roy.
Yes, I am the HMS Indefatigable.
You say it much better than I do. So today on Frivolous Gravitas, we're going to be attempting to draw attention to cynicism, broadly speaking, to define its roots, its flavors, and spillover effects in modern society and culture as we know it. So welcome to the show once again, and I'll let Jordan take us off just defining our terms as we usually do to start us off.
Yeah, so excuse me if I'm a little froggy in the throat. It's been a bit of a long week, so just bear with me.
Deep-throating frogs makes you hoarse.
Yes. I don't really have a comeback to that.
That's
anyway.
Okay. We can edit that out anyway.
Please don't. So I've dealt with a lot of cynicism over my, I guess, career. But I think the other thing is that we've all dabbled in this, and there's also definitely times where cynicism is actually a useful tool because there's definitely people who we've met that do fit this description because, we'll get into that. I'm getting way ahead of myself. So cynicism is a word that we all kind of know. Oh, you're being cynical. Oh, blah, 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 this and that. Oh, he's just cynical. Well, what does it mean? Because I remember way back when I'd use the word and I'd be like, wait, I use that word a lot. I don't think it means what I think it means. So they just have the dictionary definition here: an inclination to believe that people are motivated purely by self-interest, and it's also known as skepticism, but not in that way we had. And we were discussed a couple episodes ago. This is more a belief that people are bad inherently, and they're only out to further their own ends personally. Now, this is a very this ends up being a very sad philosophy because it doesn't really hurt. Well, it hurts other people, but it hurts yourself a lot because you're putting yourself in a position where you are in a zero-sum competition with every single person you meet ever. You won't be able to trust anybody. You won't trust your, people, the professors and fellow students that are trying to help you. You won't be able to trust any loved ones because love is just a chemical reaction, blah, 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 blah. You can, relationships are all based on, gain rather than,
sort of like a selfish for-profit model for everything, right?
Yeah. Whereas, yes,
self-interest, and
you could characterize, say, like me and my wife have a very selfish reason for being together, but that reason for being together is because we want selfishly the other person to succeed and live a happy and meaningful life. Oh my.
But I guess to start off, maybe we should discuss the roots of cynicism, because it wasn't originally intended to be, or at least my interpretation of cynicism wasn't originally intended to be this sad, Dickensian outlook on life. It was more to do with like finding joy and happiness in small things, like very Buddhist, and asceticism was a little bit too far radical, but
it was a bit of an ascetic philosophy because the word cynic itself does come from the Greek word for dog, or like
that was after Diogenes, I think, right? Because he slept outside.
Yeah, because the cynics were very low maintenance individuals.
That's one way of putting it.
And they would go around and they would practice, I guess, aggressive skepticism, not in like the Socratic style where you go around being like, why do you stand on two legs? And, the kid would go, it's because I'm a man. And Socrates would go, whoa. No, that didn't happen. But it's not even a story of something that happened. But they would
describe some of the weird things that Diogenes did, just to give people a sense of like what his philosophy was and what he was leaning at, just to get us started.
So Diogenes was a philosopher from the ancient Greek states, and he would just go around. He would live in a in a like a washing tub on the street with a bunch of dogs. Yes, and he's known for not wearing very many clothes, if any at all. And he's also known for being a jerk. So there's this one story where Alexander the Great came up to him because he's this famous and well-known philosopher, and he comes up to him and be like, teach me your wisdom, blah, blah, blah. And he goes, looks up at Alexander the Great, the, greatest warlord of the time. He says, oh, you're standing in my light. Get out of here. And this is kind of like, he's just because you have power doesn't mean you're anything, blah, blah, blah. You are just another man and you're standing in my light. What I really want is, the sun to be shining on me. So there's this element of embracement of nature in ancient, it's not asceticism, yes, but like in ancient cynicism. So it does have a bit of a naturalistic, go with the flow, go with nature's flow sentiment.
Simplicity and moderation above all else kind of thing.
Yeah, kind of like an ancient Rousseauism. But I'm sure some philosophers watching this going, no, that's wrong. But yeah, of course it's wrong. But and I shouldn't expect my camera to just...
Gravity works.
Yeah, so yeah, gravity does work, so we're all good. Did it just do it again? Okay, so where was I?
Some other stories about Diogenes, urinate in public or masturbate in front of people.
Yes,
because this complete lack of shame. So foregoing any personal embarrassment or shame or any type of these social constructs that we derive to just get along with each other and not be offensive and profane.
Right, but he would also argue like this is a natural thing that happens, like teenagers would. This is just a natural bodily function. It's like, yeah, but could you not do it in my face?
Yeah,
and like he definitely disregards cultural the cultural restraints we place on ourselves to live in a culture and a society,
norms and mores, basically.
Yeah, so when I say he's a proto-Rousseauist, this is kind of what I mean. He's also could be seen as like a proto-postmodernist. He's deconstructing Greek culture. One of his famous things is he's always pictured with a dog and some lamps in his tub. There's that one famous painting. And one of the things he did was he'd go around with a lamp, being the jerk he was, and he'd be like going around with a lit lamp in the middle of the day looking for stuff, and people would just like, he's doing the show, and people would ask him, what are you doing? He's like, I'm looking for an honest man, because it's impossible. Even during the day in full light, you still cannot find anybody honest, because, and this is kind of where the cynicism comes in, because everyone lies. And it's like, whoa, deep. And that's kind of where, like, when you're a kid, Diogenes is just the coolest because he's just this rebellious figure. He's seeing the reality of the world, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, everybody lies. It's like, yeah, but so
I do what I want. Shut up.
Yeah. And this is kind of where, now that's not to say the ancient cynics were not worth reading, because like, again, they did put a lot of thought into their philosophies. I do tend to lean towards the Stoics and also the Epicureans, like Lucretius and Epicure. But this is one. Actually, okay, tangent thought here. Here we go on a tangent. These philosophies of this time actually mirror a lot of the competing philosophies of our time, because you do have this deconstructivist narrative in the Cynics, and you do have this stiff upper lip, almost conservative in the Stoics, and then you do have this almost scientific and be good to each other, almost liberal. Classical liberal philosophy that they're fundamentals with the Epicureans, but that's just me riffing. So let's get back to the actual topic at hand, which is the Cynics. So
you were talking about how adolescents generally gravitate towards cynicism for that natural
Yeah.
predisposition they have towards all things negative and brooding?
Yes, so we will definitely be getting to that. So that's kind of a history of the Cynics, and it's kind of morphed over time, like all these ancient philosophies have done. And when it gets to our time, we have this natural inclination towards cynicism because, if everyone lies, yes, we do all lie, but like that's complicated. Let's not get into that. I don't want to. That's definitely a philosophical hole with no bottom. Okay. Now, the problem is that, okay, cynicism, everyone's out for their own self-interest because their nature is evil. Now, the problem is that some people definitely are evil. Like, you've met this guy who does things for, why would you hit that person? Why would you kick that dog? Like, who kicks a dog? Like, they say just mean things just to get their own kick out of it. And these people are out there, and maybe they need some help, but either way, in the moment, they're just evil. And you can treat them cynically. They're going to work for their own self-interest, even though their self-interest is, do harm or something, or just be a jerk. So you can be cynical about these people, but to believe that everyone needs to be treated in such a manner because everyone has, their own self-interest because, I don't know, some reason. Now, when you're a kid, no, not when you're a kid. So one of the things that we have in our society now, and I know it sounds like I'm skipping around, but now you've definitely heard this in movies and in all of our literature where you have this character, this hard-boiled character, you're watching film noir or something, which is definitely cynical. And you got this character who's like, where they're like, why are you like this? And they're like, well, everyone's only interested in their own self. And then they sit there and they brood and they're just all hard boiled and cool. And that's kind of the meat of what I'm getting at is you get this character and it's kind of, we have this idea that it's kind of cool to have this hard boiled attitude towards life. But
the character's sort of modeled after our own natural inclinations, right? Or are you saying that the character inspires that type of cynical thought in others? Is it a chicken and eggs thing, or is it just?
It's definitely a chicken and egg thing because they're not going to make those characters like those characters didn't come out of nowhere. Like you can just call it a Jungian archetype, or you can say this is like you've actually met this guy or something. But like people like that do exist, and we do have that tendency in all of us where we're just like you're having a bad day and you just want to punch the wall. No, I don't ever have it. It's like well, come on. Honesty. But it's okay to be down a bit every once in a while.
So what's the art telling us about those characters?
That they're cool. Like you got this like gruff detective sitting there and all,
Well, what's the allure to it? Like,
well, it's animalistic, so it's sexy.
So it's just like a familiarity with our own nature kind of thing?
Yeah. So what I kind of want to get in is that this man, hard-boiled female characters, I don't know, not dealing with that. He's an adult, and you get this dichotomy that this guy has grown up, seen the reality of the world, and has rejected it, and now is just fighting to survive, and that's tragic in every definition of the word. It's absolutely tragic, and he's a tragic story and a tragic tale and living a tragic life in a tragic world. And yes, there is tragedy in our lives. There's going to be tragedy in every single one of our lives, and you know why. But that's not all there is to life, and I think that's the allure of it. No, sorry. I know I'm running around. I'm trying to get to my main point, which is we have this false dichotomy, and this is definitely my main point, is that we have this false dichotomy in our society that enforces this, where you have optimism and innocence and, exuberance and all this are the realm of the ignorant child. So you have this they're tied up with ignorance when you're a kid and you don't know the real face of the world, blah, 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 blah. And when you grow up, you see the face of the world and you become cynical and hardened and, pessimistic and mistrusting because you're smart now because you're an adult. That's it. And now you have to survive because, you've seen the face of the world and it's terrible. It's like, yeah, but like you're allowed to have fun. And we all dabble in this because of something I want to get into later, but and we've all definitely had this. So you grow up and you got this other trope that goes along with it. That's, the giving up on your dreams trope, where it's like, I grew up and I knew I wasn't become this or that. It's like, find another dream. Well, no, it's not that easy. Of course it's not that easy. But like, so what it happens is you start growing up and life hits you with all that stuff that you have to do as an adult because now you're not a kid. Childhood is fun. It's great. It's happy because you're learning and you're exploring, and you grow up and everything, the novelty wears off of life, and you end up seeing the world as something more mundane and gray and drab. Colors aren't as vibrant, blah, 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 blah. You have to work for your happiness now. And you take that personally, or some tragedy, one of the tragedies that happened to all of us in life happened to us. And then you take that personally and, you blame everything that bad happens on external matters. And that's kind of, to me, that's a recipe for disappointment. But
how does that fall under like the purview of cynicism though? Like, wouldn't, in my mind, my interpretation of cynicism would be that it would be a comfort to somebody who experiences tragedy to follow a cynic's perspective, because it sort of lets loose the requirement of things panning out in your own favor for your happiness. Like a cynic's happiness is predicated basically on just simplicity, like natural events and occurrences. So wouldn't that sort of lend to somebody's comfort in the face of tragedy, in the sense that it's just a thing that happened, as a way to help them move on with it? Or
yeah, that's
like, there are ways of looking at cynicism that are slightly different. I think you and I got a different interpretation from it.
Your interpretation is seated comfortably in the ancient cynical school of philosophy, which is a nice place to be because it's not I wouldn't even say it's completely cynical in the modern term, but the way we use it today is completely different. Now, what you described, I would confidently call something like that stoicism. Something happened. That's life. You can deal with this. Move on. Don't forget them or something, or don't forget that it happened. It's just that you're strong and you can, accept the fact that life is happening to you. Stoicism. Like, it's Marcus Aurelius.
Yeah, I guess cynicism's like a preemptive stoicism. It's like being stoic before things go wrong.
Maybe.
That's one.
With a more
interesting idea.
Yeah, with a more naturalistic bent to it, because stoicism, classical stoicism, didn't they didn't really say reject humanity, embrace monkey. They were more life's happening to you, you live in a society, you better live in that society, but don't be a jerk about it. Play the middle and be a good man, kind of thing.
So the cynicism you're referring to then is just how we use it more colloquially today, like the everyday garden variety.
So, like when I was studying this, there's definitely two different forms of cynicism. There's ancient, there's ancient philosophical cynicism, and then there's contemporary cynicism. I don't actually, I couldn't find the line where contemporary cynicism kind of came to be. But my guess, and this is guess time, my guess is that the same way that the Christians kind of tried to control the rhetoric on Epicureanism and other ancient philosophers, and kind of, make it seem like their philosophies were not all they were cracked up to be, or were actually terrible. Probably took it and twisted it. So Epicureanism became hedonism and, do what you wantism and just feel goodism. Whereas in reality, Epicureanism was learn about reality, be good to others, and because being good to others leads to happiness, and happiness is the goal of being alive. So charity creates happiness. So be charitable. That's Epicureanism. But they said happy equals, the 7 deadly sins, and then they propaganda. 1,000 years of propaganda later, we've got tales of orgies. So
but I think it's also meant to like place a bold face on like appreciation of simple senses and stuff. Like they all sort of derive from the same,
right. So
like the sorry.
Oh yeah, no, but either way, what I think I'm describing is what we call cynicism now, which is a tendency for us to demonize others in our society and blame. It's definitely a blame game. So everyone, I'm unhappy because society sucks because everyone's evil. And this really has very little to do with ancient cynicism. It has some to do because, there is a causal line between them, but we've definitely been using it differently in the last couple hundred years. So what I really want to get up to is this dichotomy that we see in all of our stories now, like in our modern stories, where you have this idea that growing up is a loss of this innocence and a loss of this happiness, and that you essentially that the world sucks. Now it does to some extent because entropy. Deal with it, I guess. Okay, that was mean, but and it seems like as you grow up, you're giving up dreams. But I think what I want to get to today is that this is an illusion, because you're not really giving up on your dreams, because your childhood dreams are very low resolution. Your childhood happinesses are fond memories, and also, they're simple pleasures. You can go back to Plato and he'll say, well, these are pleasures that make you happy. What's a higher pleasure? He'll ask you. And then he'll tell you, because he's Plato and he loves himself. Read Plato. You'll know what I'm talking about. He'll bring in one straw man after another to talk about how, oh man, you convinced me. You're so great, Plato. Poor Glaucon.
It's very convenient how his arguments fall in line.
Yeah, it's worth reading though, somehow, even though the flaws. But
the nicest thing about reading Plato though is that he'll be the first to tell you not to take his word as the hard line truth. He'll be the first to say that you should question everything I say, which most people forget when they're reading the Republic. He wasn't actually advocating for slavery and class structures and things that we today vehemently oppose.
Think of it as a philosophical guitar solo.
Yeah. Wrought with all its imperfections, but it's there for the delight of the onlookers.
Yeah. So one of the reasons we do this, so we transition from childhood to adulthood, and well, we see these, we get cynical because something hurt us, and we don't want to get over it. It's not just something that happened to us; it's something that defines you, and we place ourselves as a victim of society instead of someone who's living their life. And we do this because it's cool. And I don't know if I can define cool, but we know we use that word a lot, and I think it means exactly what we mean it to mean. So as you're growing up, you follow your parents. You follow your parents everywhere, and you follow their guidance. You follow their word. You understand them. They are a beacon of light that you go, and you're learning and you're exploring and you're playing, and it's fun. There's no responsibility or little responsibility, or some if your parents are good parents. And either way, you get to a point where all of a sudden stuff starts changing in your life. You start getting older, you start understanding abstract concepts, and physical changes start happening. We all understand this. I do remember a class where I had to explain the biological aspect of it because people didn't want to believe it existed. I don't know. So this is puberty, and it happens to all of us. And if it doesn't, I'm sorry, but whatever. And what happens is you don't just change physically. We also change. There's also a cultural and societal expectations, and your place in that society change. You are put into different positions constantly because you're constantly changing. Now your voice is breaking. Oh, you're becoming a man. You're like, wow, what the heck is a man? Well, it's a featherless biped. But you realize quickly that it's more than that. And then you got to figure that out. And your dad's not telling you what a man is, and your mom's not giving you any clues. So you're just like, I don't know anything. And then you reject that. Eventually, through this sociological aspect of these changes, you reject what your parents knew. And then what happens is you are left with nothing. Now, nothing is not I don't have anything. It's nihilism. You have no values to go on. And the easiest, most basic value to go on is nothing matters. So you have this inherent nihilism that you're left with at some point. Now, there's two things you can do. You can either cling to it, which is definitely a path to cynicism, or you can start building your own. And it's hard. You don't sometimes even realize you're doing it because you're like, okay, I need money. I got to get a job. You're doing it right there. Well, why do you want to get a job? Well, because I want to, go be an adult, and I want to go, maybe have a family. I like some of these dreams that, society has given me, like, be successful. What does it mean? And then you can slowly figure this stuff out, and you start building yourself. And it's hard, and it's angry, and it's frustrating. And then eventually you come back to your parents and you're like, I get it now. And they're like, hey, yeah, we don't either. So welcome to the club. High five. But these people aren't cool. They're sitting around, they're having barbecues like awkward, people enjoying each other's company. And it doesn't look cool, because right now, the cool people are the ones who, sit in the car talking about how bad things are, how terrible they have it, and how, this and that. And right now, I feel like it's almost like we're being sold this particular brand of cool. And you see these. We're
what
getting
gain, though? Like, what advantage does that play anybody to sell you a loss of innocence? Like, wouldn't it be easier for people who are trying to manipulate you or something to get you to believe in them rather than nothing?
Right. Well, you see this in like the lone hero goes from town to town, having gunfights and stuff, and I'm just here to make some money and then move on. Or the lone wanderer, or the rebel without a cause kind of thing, or the
Batman.
The Batman. Yes, the Batman's a very good one. The Batman is probably, I was going to get to this, but the hard-boiled detective, kind of Maltese Falcon type of thing. And these characters are easy to write because they're simple, but at the same time, you get someone like Batman who's like, the city is a disease and I'm the cure or something. And, the people want to model it because Batman's cool. right? He's this guy and he goes out and he's got a purpose to fight the world with his fists. But he's not actually building anything. Batman is a childhood fantasy of, I guess power, but I don't really want to bring power too much into this because you want power, right? You want to have power over your own life. But then if everyone in the world wants power, then everyone's fighting for the power that you are trying to fight for. So everyone gets put in contention with each other.
But isn't that the dream they're selling us? That everybody has the potential to be that powerful?
Yes.
Like, that's the whole capitalist dream, manifest destiny, like all those like psychological, social pathologies that we follow and indoctrinate our children with.
But if you want to build say you want to start a company, you can't be cynical because you need those other people. You need to trust other people that they're going to do a good job. I have hired good people. You can't say, I've hired people and I got to watch them like a hawk to make sure they don't steal from me. It's like, well, duh, because you can't know if there's going to be bad apples in the bunch, but you need to work with everyone you hire to start like a restaurant, and you can't just sit there, strong arming everyone and assuming that everyone just needs to be dominated with power. Because
so what's the cynicism they're selling us then? Like, what is that cultural thing that you're talking about?
Well, it's this idea that everyone's in a power relationship with each other, and that you need to assert your power on others in order to make it in the world. So the world is just essentially a Foucauldian nightmare. Essentially everything is everything, like knowledge equals power, therefore everything is power, and therefore you're fighting in a zero-sum scramble for this a piece of the pie. And it
sounds very Marxist.
Yeah, a lot of people have pointed this out, yes. But it does feel very Marxist because you have that cynicism on a class level rather than an individual level. And it definitely plays into like identity politics quite a bit because, your group is being, ground under the heel of this other group. And well, what about me? I'm doing fine. It's like, well, individuals are just, they don't matter. It's like, okay. Step back, please, because this whole thing denies a cooperation between people. And it also denies an enlightened self-interest because yes, we are self-interested. I am literally just me. And therefore I am interested in, having me be able to eat every day. And I'm interested.
Your interests interest you. Go figure.
Yes. But, but like the whole idea, I guess this goes back to kind of an Adam Smith. And I like to think we've expanded on Adam Smith's thought. He's a good starting point, but I do want things, but I also want things for other people. Part of my happiness is dependent on the happiness of others. And okay, well, you're just a good guy. It's like a lot of people who meet me do not think I'm a good guy. In fact, I'm told I ruffle people's feathers quite regularly. I don't know, whatever. That's their problem.
They're all featherless bipeds.
Nice. You get a point for that one.
Less abrasive.
So we're sold this, that we're being placed against the system or these groups of oppression or dominance or power or whatever. There's some big bad out there that's trying to get us. Either be it like the world is just a place, blah, blah. Okay, oh, geez, okay, go away, please. I don't want to talk to you. It takes a lot of energy. But it's cool. Remember growing up, and you see those teenagers and they're smoking outside, and then they're just like, I don't care. And they're going through their little nihilistic phase. And they're just, they look so aloof and like staring off into the distance, but like they're just going through their teenage depression. But what it looks like when you're a kid is, oh man, that guy's got it all figured out. That guy's got power. But then when you meet the same people as an adult, you're like, that guy's a dink. And I remember this happened to me recently. There was not recently, a couple of years ago, there was a guy I knew as a teenager. And I always thought he was this, like, he was, above me in a hierarchy. And he was always kind of like quiet and just stood there all stoically. And I thought, that's awesome. That stoic presence that we think our elders have. And then I met him, he still got it, but it's kind of more, it's like, dude, are you burnt out? And I had this realization that it's like, okay, I've matured, and he didn't, which was sad because I want people around me to reach their potential. But we want to stay and be cool the way we were when we were teenagers. If you're cool, I wasn't cool. I'm still not cool and I don't care anymore, but we want to be cool. We want to be part of the system. And part of that is, and the reason I go to our media is because part of being cool is the performance of being cool. And the way we're cool now, I can't say we can control this. We can't control this because that's not how media works. That's not how art works. It's just going to go somewhere. I'm more saying don't trust, don't rely on something that's cool. Now, what
is that though? You keep referring to what's cool, and I didn't grow up thinking other people were cool. I don't really understand what you're referring to be honest.
That's a good point. Yeah. Okay. So
I think everybody's going to have a different childhood, right? Like even though you and I grew up in the same city or whatever, like clearly our upbringing was very different.
So I think to bring it to a definition, it's just a person that represents in your group the ideal of what you see as being near the or closer to the top of the hierarchy. And when you're a kid, the hierarchy is composed of banal, stupid shit. Because it's like, what's cool when you're a teenager? Well, race cars, motorcycles, explosions. Like, you're not the most nuanced person on the planet. So, and this is different for everyone. I didn't really see it as like, I couldn't define it back then, but I noticed whenever I was in a group, certain people were the focus of, they were kind of the rudder of the group. They were the ones that set the tone. They were the ones that set the direction and wheel of the group. And excuse me, I don't have COVID, I'm sure. And they
I mean, I was loud and aggressive, so naturally I was pushing everybody in my group around to do the things that I thought was interesting or...
Well, you were definitely... I remember meeting you. And
I wouldn't call that cool. I would call that ADD hyperactive or something.
Right. But the thing is that I was definitely not cool. I remember meeting you and noting that you were used to being the center
of attention constantly.
Yeah. So you were used to being near or at the point where you could, direct the group to some extent. And I remember that acting as something that pushed me to not be like, oh, Chris senpai, notice me, be like, I didn't want to be a lackey. I wanted to be an equal. So that pushed me to become what my conception inside that group would have been something to be cool. And I had to figure that out. And I was actually going through I need to figure everything out phase, which was kind of perfect. Because
my inspirations for that type of thing was always just confidence. My whole motivation when I was young was profit. I just didn't want to be poor ever again. So part of that was learning like the psychology of interacting with people. So I read things like Zig Ziglar and Dale Carnegie and
I remember
all those kinds of things. And it was all about like a forced projection of the person you want to be. So even if you're not there yet, the whole fake it till you make it BS or whatever. There's some There's
The
some truth
thing,
to it, because
and
you're sort of familiarizing yourself with the type of person or the type of behaviors that you'd like to see in yourself. But I don't think I could sell my personality to another person. I don't think
no,
anybody else could just adopt my way of being. Like
well,
everybody discovers their own way of being, I think.
and I think that's why we got along so well, is because I didn't try and become like you,
No,
like a
nothing like
like a
that.
lackey. I wanted to be equal. I wanted to be,
Individual.
individual, and
But sort of, I'm trying to bring this back to where I asked you,
actually,
like, what cool is, because there is some
now
type of general consensus of what
the
appeals to groups of people, right?
the idea of confidence, though, that you brought up is actually key to that, I think. And someone who's confident, I guess, enacts their will. They get what they want, or they just take it because that's what you got to do.
You got to stop deep throating the frog.
But yeah, eventually this is just going to become a Batman cast.
We should do a Batman episode.
Oh yeah, it'd be dark. Anyway,
Like a cave with the bats in it.
Yeah, sit there with my loneliness and sorrows. Ugh, that person is not confident. If they're confident, it just comes across as violent. Now, confidence is. You brought this up, and this is I think one of the key things to it is that everyone wants things they want. Yes, people do want things. It's like, but they're not in it for themselves, because they want to exist generally as, you want to be part of a group. You want to have friends and family and blah, 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 blah. It's just sometimes your family sucks. Sometimes there's no friends worth having in the school. You just get dealt a bad hand. And that sucks. But that doesn't mean that, everything's a write-off. So when you have confidence, people think, well, confidence means I can just take what I want. No, confidence is something a lot more nuanced. And I think we touched on this to some extent, is we were experimenting, faking it till we made it to some extent. But the thing is that we were, in faking it till we make it, we were experimenting with our own individuality in a setting that allowed us to do it. And that confidence gave us some gravitas, and eventually we made it. We became who we are, and now we are these people who can be confident in our own skin. And that's the confidence that is a lot more healthy than just take what I want. You're confident because you're used to and this is kind of that corporate jerk thing where they just like, you just strong arm people into do what you want. And I've met these people. My last landlord, actually 2 landlords ago, he would try and bully me into getting me to sign a thing. And I'd just be like, no, I'm not doing that, because he was used to weak people coming to him and just being like, this is the way things are going to be going. Just sign here, blah, blah, blah. And that's not confidence. That's imposition. Because that person is cynical. They think that they can get what they want by pushing people into doing what they want through force rather than.
Well, most people are that type of pushy are really insecure just to begin with. Like, usually belligerent people are the most unhappy, insecure people out there. And they're sort of asserting their dominance excessively in an attempt to overcompensate for their own feelings of low self-esteem or whatever it is. But I find it hard just to say, like, the difference between maturing and developing character, which I call confidence as part of character. I think everybody grows into their skin eventually. We just have different skin. So some people that might seem meek and mild and timid, or pushovers, might just be self-sacrificing to the world and say, well, if this person wants to be a jerk and needs it that bad, I'll just capitulate just because I'm a bigger person, without making a stink over it.
Yeah.
Not saying that's how I do it. I fight people all the time, but
well,
I don't think there's a right or a wrong way to do it.
Like, just because you've matured doesn't mean you're not gonna stand up for yourself. And the other, and you put that great, because a different instrument needs to be played in a different way. Mm-hmm. And we all have to master ourselves, because even though we're all human and, we can read the same books and get the same things, but we have to adapt. We have to apply those because we're all using, we're all on the same hardware, but we don't have the same software, which is a rough way of putting it. But I think our viewers get the point by this.
But that leads me back to my question, though, because I still don't really understand, like, how do we find things that groups think is cool? Like, how are kids gravitating towards some school of thought that they don't even properly understand just because it's alluring? Like, what is that you know what I mean? Like, what's causing that attraction towards cynicism, do you think?
I think, and this is going to sound conspiratorial, but I don't think I'm wrong, which is usually a red flag when someone says that. But self-awareness. Yeah. I'm going to still dive into that pool. There's definitely, and as long as I've been alive, at least, there's been a cult of youth in our society for at least since the 80s, where, what people want to be is young. Well, yes, it is good to be young because you're, for the obvious reasons. You have a healthy body. You have all that energy. You're not as slow. But we're forgetting that there's things that you gain with age that are very valuable, almost more valuable than some of those things. Wisdom.
Like being quick to be patient.
Yes. Waiting is, as Heinlein would say. What does that mean? It just means sit down and enjoy waiting, like be. And I think this we have in our society that youth equals good, and not only good, but ideal. And so you see this when I brought up the idea of in our I think it was like 3 episodes ago when we were talking about overprotectionism and uncertainty on the uncertainty episode. And we've got this idea that when you grow up, you become this, you morph into this evil, bitter thing. And, you don't, but what I realized when I grew up was that I got smarter when I tried harder, but I also, once I got through that nihilistic phase personally, I was able to rediscover my past joys. Like for a while there, I hid all the things I liked in my brain and in my life. And I remember my apartment at the time reflected this. There was very little that could be of opinion. My books would have been hidden. My anything that could have been anything of an opinion would have been hidden, so that I was I didn't want to expose myself to the world. But eventually I realized it's like, dude, just like what you like in all honesty, and enjoy the things that you like. And I slowly kind of started to embrace the things I was allowing myself to like in an honest manner. Now, when you're a child, you enjoy things honestly, and you have to relearn that to some extent as an adult. And I think we have this idea in our society that you have to grow up to be a bitter person just because your father was bitter, or because that woman at work is just this, disruptive female dog. And you don't have to be like them. You can grow up and be what you want. It's a little harder.
That's sort of also a function of exposure too, right? Like, kids are only going to see their parents most often.
Yes.
Like, their only idea of what an adult is, generally speaking, is going to be their parents and their parents' friends.
Yeah.
And if you go to church or something, and there's a whole bunch of adults and seniors, but most of them ignore you when you're a kid, so you don't actually really get interaction with them.
Yeah, or when you do see them, it's like, oh, aren't you a cute? And you get the same interaction over and over again. You're like, oh man, old people are tedious. Not because oh, they're so wise, but every interaction you have with them is just, they're happy to see you. They say how cute you are. And then it moves on. It's like, oh man, how many of these do I have left? I remember counting there's 5 more of these. That means 15 minutes. Oh man. But
But like to take it back to cynicism, then like we're talking about kids growing out of their innocence and finding some sort of solace or camaraderie or something in a group think of cynicism. And I guess I'm sort of picking at you to try and figure out if we can articulate exactly what that platform is, like
Yeah, I don't
what
want
draws
to.
people towards it. So
Oh, well, it's easy. It's the world's fault. It's not mine. I didn't do this. The world made me like this. I'm just reacting to it. I had dreams and the world crushed them. It's not my fault that I didn't follow them. It's nice and easy when you externalize all your problems, right? It's this, it's like a nice long band-aid that lets you not look at the wound on your arm. And
do you think parents are reinforcing those beliefs though by like coming home dejected from work and gossiping about their friends or I think a lot of it comes down to how parents are around their kids.
To some extent,
considering they're fallible human beings, it's completely understandable for them to not be perfect, but that's got to rub off on a kid in some way, shape, or form, right?
Well, to some extent, because either one of the things they could do is they realize the world is very difficult, and they're going to have to steel themselves. But kids, we like, again, we have to trust our children. Episode 2 or 3 or something, and to understand that just because. I think one of the things is that if as a parent I come home, I'm dejected, and I hit a bottle, and I don't find a center when I get home, they're going to see that as a valid way of solving their problems. Now, that doesn't mean as a parent, I don't know, I just read this poem actually about 2 or 3 days ago by, let me see if I can bring it up here. Oh, I still have it up. Good. By Robert Hayden, called Those Winter Sundays, where he thinks back, the poet thinks back to his dad, who was not nice to him. But the thing is that he wasn't, he didn't hate his son. He did everything for his son. He sacrificed everything for his son, but his son only saw the rough hands. He only saw the cold demeanor. He didn't get that affection that, all the parents nowadays feel that their children need to have. Oh, they need to be smothered in love at all times. It's like, no, the dad gave him food. He polished his shoes. He had driven out. So he says, speaking indifferently to him who had driven out the cold and polished my good shoes as well. What did I know? What did I know of love's austere and lonely offices? His dad's love didn't show. And this is kind of, he had a cynicism about his dad. And then he sat back, and when it was too late, and said, oh man, I was so wrong. My dad loved me. He just didn't show it in that way. And we can see, and we can grow beyond what we know, and we can also go beyond our own programming to some extent. And I think
so that's sort of how it's like the the microeconomy, the household, the family dynamic evolves cynicism. Why don't we talk a little bit about how the culture inspires cynicism?
So
one step out further from the community's perspective, how that influences cynicism in the young adults.
Yeah. I think a lot of, the films are written by filmmakers, and filmmakers they focus on how to make a film and not the type of, and not, they're not exactly philosophers.
Well, some of them are. Nolan's pretty deep.
I like Nolan. He's dark, but I think sometimes he gets a little too overly complicated.
Yeah, that's a common theme though with sharp-witted people.
Yeah,
I'm sure Beethoven and Bach tripped over their own sonnets once in a while too.
Yeah, watch this, and everyone's like, "Cool," but I think one of the things is a lot of people are making, you have these ideas that we're making a lot of stuff for, okay, so yeah, here's where I want to go. I hadn't decided where I wanted to go until that exact moment. We're making a lot of stuff just for children. And when we make stuff for a child, you can't enjoy it forever. I think back to Keats, a thing of beauty is a joy forever. Well, a thing of childhood is a joy for a child. And when we present these stories, which are inherently simple to our children, rather than telling them, a story that will kind of expand in their mind as they grow up. I'm thinking like Lord of the Rings or something, which, as you grow up, you're like, oh man, this makes more and more sense. And, 5 years later, it's like, whoa, I get it even more. It expands, it unlocks. It's like a zip file slowly opening up in your brain. But we're presenting something like, I don't know, The Hunger Games or Harry Potter or something. Harry Potter is not actually that bad because it's just kind of good versus evil. But you get something like, there's a class war happening in this world, and this is, a bunch of teenagers have to fight the power in order to survive it, blah blah blah. And this is, we're like pushing this out because kids seem to be eating it up. And if I didn't have this oppressive, force on me, then I wouldn't have had to give up my dreams of being a whatever, or this or that. And right now we're telling a lot of stories of victims.
That's so true. Yeah. I never even noticed it before until you said it like that.
Well, I'm having trouble.
It's all about the conquering victim. Yeah.
Yeah. And which is great, because I remember when I was a teenager, I loved revenge movies. Oh man, did I love them. Revenge movies like
Payback was the best with Mel Gibson.
Payback. Boondock Saints was great. It's just like, they got
everything
us.
By Schwarzenegger, Van Damme, and Stallone.
Yeah. Old Boy was like these movies on revenge where it's just like Taken, the dad goes out and he just destroys the guys who hurt him, which is kind of cool. But and then you get like something like Batman, who's just like, I am a force for justice. And without defining what justice is, we see ourselves in this light. I have to go and fight something. I have to go and destroy something. I have to go fight the thing that's holding me down, holding me back, that's hurting me. Well,
it's like looking for an aggressor when there is none, kind of, right?
Right. And you're the one hurting yourself. It's like you go on social media and there's the people that go on and be like, oh, my life's so depressing. And you see all these memes that are just like talking about how depressed they are. And it's like, well, that sucks to be you then, I guess. I don't know what to say about that. Good luck with that. I hope you find some meaning in your life, but we're being presented as if, you grow up and stuff gets bad, and now you have to deal with overpopulation or, the terrible economy. The economy's always been terrible, like literally since the dawn of time. But or you have to like deal with the environment, which is actually an issue. But it's not like, I don't know, you see someone like, actually Greta Thunberg is a good example of this, where she just goes up in front of people and goes, accusation, like, you did this to me, I should be in school. It's like, yeah, you should be. Then you'd be able to learn, ecology and help with the problem instead of, but no, you're just going to go out and complain, and that's not useful. So we have all these, our role models are actually terrible right now. So they're presenting the world in such a way where you don't have, the world isn't, okay, I've been saying this. Okay, so what about a good role model? I keep getting back to Lord of the Rings because it's that story. Okay, it's a Catholic story, but not really. But these people are caught up in these events and they have to deal with it. And the ones that don't deal with it are like, come to a bad end because they succumb to their evil. I see like Boromir, who made a mistake and he paid for it, or the evil guys, and they're the ones who are saying, oh, I can, as long as if I could just fight them, I could do, but then they end up corrupted. The King of Rohan, he's being whispered into his ear, oh, these people are coming in to get you. It's Gandalf here, he's coming in, he's gonna he's coming in and he's going to steal your throne. All these people are here and they're going to take over your realm and blah, blah, blah. When in reality, it's just this guy. C'est une frog. But, and this is just this guy whispering in his ear all the things that, all this poison, this cynicism, everyone's out to get you. You got to protect yourself. And he just starts withering away into this decrepit old man when he was still kind of, he's fewer days ahead than behind, but he's still strong and he's still the king. And this cynicism, this poison dripping into his ear makes his kingdom weak, and it makes his rule, it makes its rule succumb to these, evil forces that are coming out of the east. So this, yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, on that note, you've mentioned it a few times now, and I can't help but bite, so I'll play the Socratic gadfly for a second here.
Please.
You're talking about evil people, and I firmly believe that all people are like me. They intend to do well. Some of them might be mentally unstable, and they might commit evil deeds just based on greed or, human nature stuff, crimes of passion or whatever. Mm-hmm. To say that somebody is inherently evil, like they were born evil, sort of suggests a line of reasoning that I know you object to, which is the inherited sin.
Yeah, you're right to pick this out because...
Sorry.
No, one of my students actually noted this too, because we're talking about history, and there's people like, there's some dark stuff in history, and I'm not glossing over it. And one of the things he noticed is like, but it's more complicated than that. I'm like, you've got a lot of promise, and I'm thinking that, but and we had a discussion, and it was actually kind of neat because we went through it, and it's like, okay, there's just people, and there's people that do good things, and then there's people that do bad things, and sometimes you are a person who is doing a bad thing, and you're a person who's doing an evil thing, and it's hard to know, but most of the time you're a person who's just doing a thing. It's not good or evil, you could be making mistakes. Whether or not that's evil depends, but I get that like Solzhenitsyn line where it's like the line between good and evil goes down the heart of every man, which is true because we can make a choice. Now, sometimes you get a person that just kind of always seems to make an evil decision. And sometimes you get people who just seem to do good things all the time without trying. And so that's kind of the nuance where I sit. Some of us are definitely more inclined one way or another, or even to be inclined to be, somehow extremely neutral.
Or ignorant of the ramifications of their actions, right?
It does help to be a bit smarter.
Well, I mean self-aware, not just like intelligent as in I know things because I read things, but like awareness of other people feeling things is really important to how you react and respond to other people, because you influence other people's feelings.
Yeah, and I don't want to just say that it's all your... I don't even want to say that it's, good and evil is just your choice either, because you get a dog, you can breed dogs for aggressiveness and hostility. And there's something about the way they're made up that just inclines them to just attack everything. And I know it's gauche to say this now, but every once in a while you get a person that's just inclined to be angry or...
Wouldn't that be suggestive of an illness, though?
Could be.
Like a mental dysfunction if they're predisposed to feeling angry all the time. It almost gives it more cause to pity the person than to chastise them for their ill deeds.
Actually, yeah, that's exactly right. Because like you just, oh man, he just wants to fight everything, and there's nothing. His chemistry is such that he just...
Yeah, it's pitiful.
Like, it's pitiful, but you can't be like, if it's one's choice, I find it very hard to pity that person. If it's not their choice because they're ill, or it's just unfortunately who they are, they were dealt a bad genetic hand, then it's pitiable. But if, someone's dealt a, saintly hand and they just go around helping people, they're admirable. But if someone chooses in spite of it to be good, then that's almost more admirable. I think.
So what's the harm in a cynicism that leads somebody towards benevolence? Would be my follow-up question to that.
I'll counter your question with a question. Can cynicism lead to benevolence?
Oh, absolutely. Like,
how so?
If you're trying to scrap all your stuff, and like when Diogenes had a cup that he used for water and it was his only utensil, and he saw a kid drinking water from a fountain out of his hands, he gave his cup away. So like the person who received the cup would consider that a benevolent deed for somebody who has absolutely nothing sleeping on the street to offer up their only possession. But to him, he didn't care about it because he was a cynic.
So
is that true benevolence? Is that goodwill? Is that even something to be lauded? Or is that still a reprehensible evil act of a cynic?
Well, and I think this is a fun place to play in because if I put my cynic hat on, and it all depends, and cynicism is a lot about relative perception of events. Because if I put my cynic hat on, why did Diogenes do that? What made him, like, what did he think to get out of that? Like, he just wanted to look like a good guy. He just wanted to show that cynicism is, something that's good. Being cynical about cynicism.
Well, that's why Jesus got crucified, right? It was to make a show. It was literally the reason he let himself be crucified. So there has to be some kind of showmanship or game to be played.
There might be something about the ritual of sacrifice.
There's a whole bunch of embedded meanings and
but it depends. If you can
it.
be, and that's the thing. Cynicism is just one hat you can wear, and don't make it your personality. Because I've used it before to dissect, arguments and to figure out what's going on. Like, because you can be cynical. Because if you do find someone who's definitely power driven, cynicism is a great tool to evaluate that person. Then you take off your hat when you look at, his chief lieutenant, who's like, a benevolent schemer or something, who's just like, how do I get food to the poor people of this country? Something like that. And you can't look at him with the same hat because it doesn't explain their actions as well. So you can take any situation. Why did that guy fix my car? Well, because I paid him. Well, maybe he loves being a mechanic, and being paid for it is almost secondary. Because one of these, like, and the thing is that, yes, they're both right, which is why this is such a dangerous thing. Because, yes, I do like getting paid for my work. I do like doing a good job, too. So is that cynicism? But to me, it's how do you want to perceive your world and the way you live in the world? Because, yes, people, and I remember even thinking about this myself, all altruism is self-interest. It's just like one of the most cynical things you can say. Now,
but nevertheless, very true.
Yeah, and I still find, like, when I'm trying to be charitable, I don't like, look at me, I'm charitable, because the cynical me thinks that's just,
it's so vain.
It's so vain. Like, you're not actually being charitable. Like,
every time I walk by a mirror, I make a point not to look because it feels so much like vanity. It's just as extreme to do the opposite. Like, the person who looks in the mirror every time they walk by it is just as extreme as me who walks by it and refuses to look in the mirror for the exact opposite reason. Like, moderation would dictate that, well, if there's something on your face and it offends other people, like spinach in your teeth, if you're already in front of a mirror, you should check it. Like, that's just a rational, efficient way of going about your day in a civilized society.
Yeah, and I think...
But cynicism is like an extreme, is I guess what I'm getting at.
It is an extreme. It's an extreme position. And I think I don't like it because I used to be very, very, very cynical, and I see that person I used to be.
You're talking about the contemporary sense, though, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Like distinguishing from the philosophical and the contemporary.
Because I used to be that individual who thought people were just using me to, as a, corporate pawn to make money off of me.
You were probably right.
I was working at Starbucks, so I was definitely right.
Yes, the shareholders will all agree to that.
Yeah. No, it was your third home. It's like, yeah, if by home you mean prison. Oh, sorry. I'm definitely cynical about Starbucks because I had a bad time there. But like, I can't dwell on it. I can't make that my identity. I can't be like, oh, I'm someone that hates Starbucks. It's like, and like, I'm not going to also go up to people and be like, you bought at Starbucks? How dare you? It's just like, don't you know that they enslave people? It's like, no, it's like, no, people are allowed to enjoy things. I'm not going to, force my cynicism on other people. And just because I'm still cynical about it doesn't mean I have to let that rule me. I'm also cynical about the years I wasted, aimlessly trying to figure out what I needed to do with my life.
But see, I wouldn't call that aimless. I would say the aim was figuring out what you wanted to do, and it just happened to take time. Things often take time. So to me, the cynicism is the perspective that something was wasted or lost.
Yeah,
in the process. That's
I realize that
in my mind.
But I think that's just sour grapes. When I look at it from, take my cynicism hat off and I just put on a different hat and be like, I'm just mad I'm getting older. Like, that's just time. Mm-hmm. I need to come to terms with that and just put on my stoicism hat. And that's a lot healthier for me too, because, I don't want to live a world of anger towards the things I have to live with in this world. It's like, I do hate things, of course. I'm human. I'm not Jesus.
There are useful facets to cynicism, though. Like, for people contingency planning, for example, you have to imagine situations where things go wrong to preemptively plan for them so that you're prepared if they do go wrong.
Oh,
so having the ability to be cynical is very useful as a planner or a manager, for just one example. Well, another example could be like with somebody in court. So very acutely and astutely identifying language and semantics and loopholes and like the script, the inscriptions of our acts and bills and legal proceedings. Like, parliamentary process is extremely cynical. Like science, we've talked about it before on the channel. Like, science is pure cynicism. You're basically trying to disprove everything you know. That's the scientific method. And what you don't know, you're trying to prove whether or not what your conjectures. So it's not intrinsically a negative thing to be negative. It's very productive to be negative in many instances. But I think what you're getting at is the overarching negativity, where things are just boundlessly negative for absolutely no purpose or aim or goal.
Yeah, and it is like, if you're writing and you brought up the court, or if you're trying to figure out, I guess, something in history even, you can ask the question, like, what's in it for them? Which is a good question. Like, why did they do this? Well, what did they get out of it? Like, simply, that's a good question to ask. Like, because
we expect that from our research to like mention conflicts of interest and things like that.
Yeah, and so, well, what did they get out of it? Well, he got, a new fief, and he got a bunch of new peasants to build a castle with. So it's like, that sounds like a good motivation. But then, you get people who are like, well, if you just, all you need to do to make it, or to find things out in journalism, is just follow the money. It's like, money isn't the only motivation, buddy. Or
pretty close to it.
It's pretty close. Or you get, what was that other one? I forgot what it was. My brain's a little fuzzy, but that's probably a good example, because like, you're boiling it down. You're boiling your universe to a simplistic set of motivations that you're placing yourself almost separate from. Well, obviously, it's almost like solipsistic wank, but but you're also placing yourself in a weird dichotomy where you're in competition with everyone else in the world. And to some extent, yes, you are. But, if you're on a hockey team, You're not in competition with everyone on the ice. You're in competition with your own body, skate faster. You're also in competition with the other team, but you're not in competition with your goalie. You're not in competition with the defense. You're not in competition with the guy in left wing.
Well, you might be if you're competing for ice time.
Yeah. But
just splitting hairs.
It depends on your focus, but at the same time, you need, like, if you're on a shift together, you need to work together. And so you're putting yourself in a position where you're almost putting yourself in a harder position in life. And you need other people. Like, not all other people. Just choose the people you're with carefully. Yeah, reject those people that seem to make bad decisions over and over and over and over and over again that hurt people. Like,
you sort of say that like it's negative though. Like, what's so terrible about being in competition with every other person in the world? If it's a friendly competition, like when you and I kick a ball around, we don't give each other the easiest possible pass because that's not fun.
You're
it's
right.
Not engaging. You got to like give the other person some sort of challenge. So
right. So I was thinking more of like zero sum competition rather than like, healthy competition. Like,
I think it's important to underline that though, because competition itself, a lot of people will interpret as some productive capital.
I'm not anti-competition at all. In fact, I wish there was I heard there's what do you call it? Medical expenses are high. What do? Well, you graduate more doctors, so that there's more competition with doctors. They have to improve their skills and their prices go down. So they can't afford 2 Mercedes-Benzes. And all of a sudden you have a better healthcare system because of competition. It's the capitalist dream and it's very simplistic, but then competition on that hockey thing is like, yeah, you got to push harder. You got to, exactly what you said. And,
I think it's important to note that it's not inherently negative to be cynical or pessimistic. I just want to line that out because a lot of what we're talking about today is sort of like how it's wrong to be cynical, or like how when I was cynical, I had to change myself to be better or something like that. I think.
Yeah. And I think because there is a place for it. It's just, I think my contention with it is that we've glamorized it to such an extent that it's honestly getting annoying. And we've made this world where, people go around as adults saying like, oh, the world crushed my dreams, blah, blah, blah. It's like, your dreams sucked. You were 15, make new ones, make better ones. Like, your dreams should be constantly evolving. Plus, I have more than one dream. I'm getting new dreams all the time. And sometimes I crush them because like, no, I don't want to do my own plumbing. Like, I thought I could rewire my house and it'd be awesome. I had plugs everywhere. It's like, no, I'm going to go put my effort somewhere else. It's a neat dream, but it's a dumb one for me. But, like, I still want to get my pilot's license. That's still a dream. It's not crushed because I'm 35 now and I can't become a commercial pilot. Shut up. No, I just haven't done it yet. I have dreams that are more important right now. And I think what I'm talking about right now is less this glamorization of cynicism, which it is. But the component of it is in a misunderstanding of freedom. Because you think you have all this freedom when you're a child. You have this perfect freedom where you can run around, everything is fine and new and you can explore, but then you got to give up all your freedom when you grow up and like get a desk job and stuff like that. Well, yes, you have a job, but you have your freedom that you have as a child isn't a useful freedom that you can attain as an adult. And
it's not very rewarding either. Like, if you had a childish freedom as an adult, what could you possibly experience that is mature? Everything you'd experience would be just, Playland, Lego.
And I think this actually brings us to the ancient cynics too, as well, because their embracement of nature was that natural animalistic freedom, that, I should be able to go off and do whatever I want in nature. But then, you have, as one of my professors put it, it's like an eleutheria, this Greek notion of freedom. But we have this different sort of freedom where, okay, I'm going to put my work in, and then I will gain the freedom that I have now the freedom to have children and a house. And the house gives me a freedom to have more privacy. And these freedoms that I've worked for are a lot more valuable than a undistilled freedom that I could have if I went out and lived in nature. Because now I also have the freedom to not die of an infection when I'm 42. So that's pretty cool. And
yeah, choose where you go on holiday or go camping or something. Like, you can do all these things with the responsibility you have of having to maintain a livelihood and a body. You can now do exponentially more with that investment of your time and energy.
This is kind of like, what was his name, Jocko's thing, with discipline equals freedom, which is like the best motivation ever. But I think a lot of us are just holding on to these childhood notions because we're being shown that being a child is the ideal of what it means to be human. Like, small nitpick as an example, people are naming their children, and they're not naming their children for who they will be as an adult. So you get a kid who's named like, oh, it's Billy, but this Billy's a boy's name. Billy's not a man's name. And so Billy needs to grow up into William. And you get a lot of this now where you have these people are naming their kids as if they're like a doll, and they aren't naming their kids for the adults that they see them becoming, because it's nice to have a child in the house, and children are so wonderful, aren't they? Well, they are wonderful when they grow up into, wonderfully competent and responsible adults. That's what a parent wants, right? Right? So that might be stretching a bit, but it's kind of where I'm coming from. I don't know if I made much sense there.
Yeah. I guess what I would comment on that is, it sounds sort of like nostalgia is being romanticized as the ideal. It's like people are hanging their hats on a rack of nostalgia as if that itself is enough feel good for the rest of your life. Rather than making new experiences to feel good about, let's just be as childish and as infantile as possible to hold on to whatever's left of our innocence from youth.
You have like
I think it's such a regressive
word.
What's that?
You have a knack today for pulling out the perfect word.
I think it's really it's dangerous. Like, it's a hazard to society to raise children, or to raise adults who are children. Mm-hmm. And like, the most obvious reflection of that to me is in like advertising. If you look at commercials, how they just tell you what to think and be with imperatives directly. Like, I wrote a song about it because it just drives me insane. Consumer divorce. But
I'll have to go back and listen to that again.
The way they present marketing material is in big, bold, bubble letters, lots of colors, infographics, almost no text, no thought process. They tell you exactly what it is and how to feel about it. They'll say, this car makes you more powerful. They don't even let you fantasize about your own car. They tell you how this car is going to make you feel when you buy it at a 3.9 APR.
Well, my problem with that is like, and it's a good point, because one thing I've noticed is that, my father-in-law, he notices how advertising is like, big dumb old man, who's like got this woman showing him how to not be big and dumb and oafish, and he's like, they're making fun of me. And he's not the most complicated man. He's a good man, but he's simple, and simple is not a derogatory term. Simplicity is something.
No, I admire it, actually.
Yeah. And he's kind of like, this is offensive, but like, he's not gonna dwell on it and get bitter about it, because he's not a cynical man.
Yeah. It's a commercial. Like, who cares?
Yeah. But it's happening so much that it's kind of like, it's rubbing him the wrong way. And there's also this tendency of, you have they're presenting men right now as these like men who should be, working their butts off in their early 20s, is like these man children who, I don't know, it's almost odd because you see these men and they're just overly happy about all this stuff, and it's off-putting because men aren't supposed to kind of have that unrestrained glee. I know it's like, well, Jordan,
unbridled gaiety.
yeah, and I'm just like, I can be happy about things, but I've never been one to just be like, yay. Even that was a show. Like, I couldn't do that at Starbucks, which is one of the reasons I was miserable there, because I'm happy about things that are worth being happy about. I'm not going to just be happy because something I like happened.
But again, is there really any harm in it? Like, I'm not saying I'm offended by the commercials. I just think it's telling of where the mentality of adults, the people who buy and spend money, it's telling of where their mentality is. If the smartest social psychologists in the world are advertising in this way, that just shows you that that's how people already are, if that type of marketing is working.
And so you get, instead of like, and this is the marketing to men is almost the most, because marketing to women hasn't really changed much. It's a bit more, you can be a strong woman, but like, strong women are great. I don't know why you'd want a weak one. Because weak isn't meek. That's a difference. Meek is like someone who could be strong, but restrains himself.
But if they're going to keep marketing to women as saying, like, you need to be beautiful and have this type of figure and do this, women are still going out and paying money for not narcotics, cosmetics. Like, they're still spending billions of dollars per year, not on health, but on cosmetics.
Right.
So the marketing follows the social.
And so you get men right now who are being marketed and told to be happy about meaningless games and products, childish things. Men are like, I find it weird how it's like, I don't know, I worked at a board game restaurant. I don't know if any of them are watching. Sorry, guys. But everyone was obsessed with games. And like, games are fun. I like playing games. And like, I've got a Steam account and whatnot. But like, games come after work. And I was working towards stuff. And I felt like I couldn't get into the culture of the board game restaurant because I had goals beyond, buy next game, play next game, be happy for it, rinse, repeat. And I felt like this is a good way to, find myself 55 and not having achieved anything. Because I had just recently at that time gotten to the age of like 23, 24 and gotten like, oh boy, I need to get everything together. And, that desperation, I slammed myself into the books.
So was that cynicism then that helped you change your mind or gravitate away from the board tables?
No, for me, that was desperation. I needed to become more than I was because I didn't like what I saw my future is. And I saw that childish me in the culture of the gaming industry. Like, I'm not saying the games are bad, but like everything in moderation. But when you make your life about I'm a gamer or I'm I just want to do things I like. It's like, yeah, we all do, but that comes after work. That comes after you putting the discipline of effort in. And that's, to me, was a place I didn't want to go because I felt I could become cynical from that position. And, I find myself like, if I had not put all the effort I had in the last like 12 years, and I would be a cynical mess right now at the age of 35 going like, ooh, why don't I have these things? It's like, because you haven't worked for them yet. And
you're clearly proud of your accomplishments, and rightfully so. And I think that's the benefit and emphasis we should be having on maturity. It's not the sake of being like more aware than others or more mature than others or, standing taller than other people. I think what we really forget to accentuate when we're behaving with like the youth watching, when people are looking up to us, when we act childish, it sort of gives them lead to do the same, to grow into adult children. Yeah. And I think we should be more mindful of the ways that we choose to spend our time and the discipline we apply to our own lives because there are young people watching. I think the best way to side skirt all the negatives of cynicism like the non-philosophical cynicism, but like the colloquial contemporary cynicism that
And the
we're talking
cynicism
about.
as a tool.
Yeah, I think the best way around that is to show more emphasis on the rewarding feeling of fulfillment, the greater longevity of a fulfilling endeavor or practice, as opposed to an immediate gratification. Like delayed gratification is so underappreciated, especially amongst the youth. But I've noticed even in adults today, whereas it used to be something to come home to a scotch or something like that, that was, the old man's drink after work. But like to see a bar 20 years ago or 40 years ago and to see a bar today, like you see all these people filling them like patios and stuff at like 5 in the afternoon.
Yeah. Well, and you
Like
got this
the whole
party
day hasn't even been
mentality.
put in yet.
Like I was talking about the man children, but the party mentality where it's just like, oh, I just want to party my entire life. This is the best. Why wouldn't I do this all right? It's like, it's just hedonism. It's like, you haven't read Lucretius, buddy. There's
That's
sacrifice in hedonism.
Yeah, and you have no appreciation whatsoever for Epicurean schools of thought if you don't taste proper gourmet food. If you're just eating craft dinner over and over again, just because you like food doesn't make you an epicure.
Yeah. And
there's a lack of experience there, like a depth of knowledge and experience that's completely overlooked when you live through this cynical lens.
And I think your conclusion there is actually a good place to stop, because I think you put a nice, neat little bow on
that.
So if you've made it to this point, I'd like to thank all our viewers for. We do have a couple viewers, and that's nice. And we've made it to 20 episodes. This is part of our little discipline that we've made for ourselves to keep ourselves going during the pandemic, also because we want to do it. So it's nice to get to 20. Maybe we'll do something fun at 25.
Yeah, streamers, and if we can ever go to the store again, we can get some of that silly string.
Yeah. We'll have a adult, respectable party. So yeah. I think
thanks for tuning in. Check out the RSS feed for the audio only version if you don't want to lose all your data streaming YouTube videos in 1080p. We do have podcasts up, and the RSS feed is linked in the description below, and those usually go up slightly before the YouTube one. So if you're antsy to get your hands on our latest episodes, that's the spot to hit it. But as always, like, comment, share, and subscribe. It's free, and it's the best way to support this channel. We're here just promoting education, growth, long-form discussion, and hopefully you all get something beneficial out of it. So thanks for watching.
See you guys later.